The massive screen in the Galactic Council chamber flickered to life. Emperor Vexithar stood tall, his crystalline body catching the light from 1,000 different angles. His species had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries, and everyone knew. What happened when the Zephyrian Empire made demands? People of Earth, his voice boomed across space, translated into every human language. You have been observed. You have been judged. You have been found wanting. The other council members watched in silence. They had seen this speech before, delivered to dozens of worlds. It always ended the same way. The Emperor's towering form cast shadows across the chamber as he continued. Your primitive civilization has exactly 72 standard hours to surrender completely. Your military will be disbanded. Your governments will step down. Your planet will become part of the Zephyrian Empire. This is not a negotiation. This is not a request. This is your only chance to avoid total destruction. The camera focused on Earth's representative. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat quietly in her simple blue suit, hands folded in her lap. She looked exactly like what she was, a middle-aged diplomat from a small planet that barely knew space travel existed beyond their own solar system. We have conquered 3,000 star systems, the Emperor continued. We have defeated every military force we have encountered. We have weapons that can crack planets and shields that can stop supernovas. Your entire civilization exists only because we have not yet decided to end it. Admiral Korathax stood behind the Emperor, his scarred face telling the story of 17 successful planetary conquests. He had seen fear in the eyes of every species they had defeated, terror, anger, desperate bargaining, but always fear. The ambassador raised her hand politely, like a student asking permission to speak. The gesture was so simple, so human, that several council members actually smiled. Here was someone who clearly did not understand the situation. Yes, the Emperor said, amused despite himself. Ambassador Chen stood up slowly. She was not tall, not impressive, not threatening in any way. When she spoke, her voice was calm and pleasant. Thank you for the warning, Your Supremacy. That was very considerate of you. We appreciate having time to prepare. The silence in the chamber stretched on for long seconds. The Emperor's crystalline face shifted through several colors. Confusion, anger, more confusion. Warning? He finally asked. Yes, Chen replied with a gentle smile. 72 hours is quite generous. Most civilizations probably do not get such advance notice. We are grateful for your thoughtfulness. Admiral Korathax leaned forward, studying the human woman more carefully. In all his years of conquest, no species had ever thanked them for an ultimatum. Most begged for mercy, offered bribes or made angry threats they could not back up. You do understand, the Emperor said slowly, that we are giving you the choice between surrender and annihilation? Oh yes, Chen nodded. We understand perfectly, and we choose to be ready. Ready for what? The Admiral asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. Chen's smile never wavered. Ready for you to arrive, of course. We will use the 72 hours wisely. Again, thank you for the advance notice. It really is quite helpful. The Emperor looked around the chamber. Other species representatives were staring at the human woman with expressions ranging from admiration to pity. Clearly, this primitive species simply did not comprehend the situation. You realize, the Emperor tried again, that we have 3,000 warships. Each one could destroy your entire planet. Yes, we saw the fleet reports, Chen replied pleasantly. Very impressive. We look forward to meeting you in person. The ambassador bowed politely to the chamber and sat back down. She pulled out a small device that looked like a primitive communication tablet and began typing quietly, as if she was updating her calendar for the weekend. The Emperor stared at her for a full minute. Never, in 3 centuries of expansion, had any species responded to their ultimatum with anything resembling gratitude. The humans had not even asked about surrender terms. They had not begged for more time. They had simply said thank you and started planning. Admiral, the Emperor said quietly, review our intelligence on human military capabilities. Korathax activated his own display. Single planet species, Your Supremacy. No faster than light travel. chemical rockets for space transport, nuclear weapons, but primitive ones. Energy weapons are basic laser and plasma technology. No shields worth mentioning, no artificial gravity. Their largest military vessels are smaller than our fighter craft. Population? 8 billion. No significant off-world colonies. A few research stations on nearby planets, but nothing that could support large populations. The Emperor nodded slowly. Industrial capacity? Limited. They have basic manufacturing and some automated systems, but nothing approaching imperial standards. Their computers are electronic rather than quantum. Their artificial intelligence is barely functional. They still use biological pilots for most spacecraft. And yet, the Emperor mused, they thanked us for warning them. Perhaps they are simply too primitive to understand the threat, the Admiral suggested. But something nagged at the Emperor's mind. In his long experience, there were two types of species that did not fear the Empire. The first were too stupid to understand the danger. The second were too powerful to care about it. Humans had developed nuclear weapons. They had reached space. They had created global communication networks. They were not stupid. Admiral, prepare the fleet for immediate departure. I want to see these humans for myself. The full armada? Your supremacy? Yes. 3,000 ships. If these humans are hiding something, I want overwhelming force available. As the council chamber began to empty, Ambassador Chen continued typing on her small device. If anyone had been watching closely, they might have noticed that she was not typing randomly. She was sending a very specific message to Earth. The message was simple. They took the bait. Fleet ETA 72 hours. Activate all protocols. On Earth, that message reached the desk of General Patricia Morrison within minutes. The general looked at the message, nodded once, and pressed a single button on her console. Across Earth, screens lit up in government facilities, corporate headquarters, research institutions, and military bases. The message that appeared was, equally simple, condition starfall. All units report readiness. Within an hour, responses began flooding back. NASA reported ready. The European Space Agency reported ready. SpaceX reported ready. Every major corporation with space assets reported ready. Every government with orbital facilities reported ready. But the most important responses came from facilities that did not officially exist. Underground bunkers where humanity's greatest secret had been developing for decades. Research centers, hidden beneath mountains and ocean floors. Orbital platforms disguised as communication satellites. They all reported the same thing. Ready. Dr. Elizabeth Harper sat in her command center 3 miles beneath the Colorado mountains. Around her, thousands of technicians monitored systems that had never been tested in real combat. She looked at her watch and smiled. 72 hours. More than enough time. Humanity had been preparing for this moment since the day they first looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. They had always known the answer was no. They had always known that someday, someone would come calling. The only question had been whether they would be ready. Ambassador Chen had just told the galaxy that they were. Space itself seemed to tear open at the edge of the Sol system. One by one, 3,000 Imperial warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Each vessel was massive, the smallest destroyer larger than any building on Earth. The capital ships were mobile cities, bristling with weapons that could level continents. Emperor Vexthar stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, his flagship. The ship was 20 kilometers long and had personally overseen the conquest of 47 worlds. Its weapons had cracked moons, its shields had survived direct hits from stellar flares. Sensors are reading the system, your supremacy, reported Lieutenant Zexali from the tactical station. Third planet shows signs of advanced civilization. 8 billion life forms detected. Military assets? Admiral Korthax asked. Scanning. Now multiple orbital installations detected. Appears to be communication satellites, research stations, and some basic defensive platforms, also detecting movement from the asteroid belt. The Emperor moved to the main display. The Sol system spread out before him in 3 dimensions. Earth was a blue-green marble, exactly as their intelligence reports had described. But something was moving between Earth and the asteroid belt. "What am I looking at, Lieutenant?" "Approximately 300 vessels, Your Supremacy. They appear to be approaching our position." The Admiral laughed, a harsh sound. 300 ships? Against 3,000? These humans are even more foolish than I thought. But as the display updated with more detailed scans, the laughter died away. The approaching human fleet was not behaving like any enemy formation they had ever encountered. Most species, when faced with impossible odds, either scattered in panic or charged forward in desperate fury. The humans were doing neither. They advanced in perfect formation, their movements precise and coordinated. There was no hurry, no confusion, no signs of panic. They moved like predators who knew exactly what they were hunting. "Vessel composition?" the Emperor asked. "Mixed fleet, Your Supremacy. Some appear to be purpose-built military vessels, but others look like converted civilian ships, mining vessels, cargo haulers, even what appears to be passenger transport." "They are sending civilian ships against us?" the Admiral asked in disbelief. "That is what the scans indicate. However, all vessels show significant modifications. Additional armor plating, weapon mounts, and some kind of advanced sensor array." The Emperor studied the approaching fleet. The ships were tiny compared to Imperial vessels, but they moved with a coordination that spoke of excellent training. Or something else. "Time to intercept?" 6 hours at current velocity. "Are they trying to communicate?" "No transmissions detected, Your Supremacy. They are maintaining radio silence." This bothered the Emperor more than he cared to admit. Every species they had conquered had tried to negotiate at the last moment. Even the most warlike races had demanded to know terms of surrender or hurled threats across space. The humans said nothing. They just kept coming. "Admiral, scan for hidden vessels, cloaked ships, stealth technology, anything we might have missed." "Already scanning, Your Supremacy. No hidden vessels detected. No energy signatures that would indicate cloaking technology. What we see appears to be their entire fleet. 300 ships against 3,000, the Emperor murmured. "Either they are completely insane or they know something we do not." "Perhaps they have some kind of secret weapon," suggested the lieutenant. "Unlikely. Our intelligence is thorough. They have no technology we have not encountered before. Nuclear weapons, kinetic projectiles, basic energy weapons. Nothing that could threaten even our smallest destroyer." But as the hours passed and the human fleet continued its steady approach, the Emperor found himself increasingly uneasy. There was something wrong with this picture, something his battle-tested instincts were trying to tell him. "Lieutenant, analyze their formation. What tactical doctrine are they following?" The display shifted to show movement patterns and positioning. After several minutes, the lieutenant looked up with a confused expression. "I cannot identify the doctrine, Your Supremacy. It does not match any known tactical formation in our database." "What do you mean?" "The positioning appears random at first glance, but computer analysis shows it is actually extremely precise. Each ship is positioned to provide maximum coverage for its neighbors while maintaining clear firing lanes, but the mathematics involved would require computational power, far beyond what humans possess." The Admiral moved to look over the lieutenant's shoulder. "Show me their approach vector." The display zoomed out to show the entire system. The human fleet was not taking the shortest route to intercept the Imperial Armada. Instead, they were following a complex spiral path that kept them always in motion, never presenting a static target. "They are using the gravity wells of planets and asteroids to mask their true velocity," the Admiral realized. "This is not the tactic of primitives." "And look at this," the lieutenant added, highlighting certain ships in the formation. Every 17 minutes, 3 ships break formation for exactly 43 seconds, then return to position. The pattern repeats, but with different ships each time. What purpose could that serve? Unknown. But it is too precise to be random. They are following a plan. The Emperor watched the approaching fleet with growing concern. In 3 centuries of conquest, he had learned to trust his instincts. Something was very wrong here. Open. A communication channel. I want to speak with their commanding officer. Channel open, Your Supremacy. Human vessels, this is Emperor Vexthar of the Zephyrian Empire. Identify your commanding officer and state your intentions. For several minutes there was no response. Then a voice came over the communication system. It was calm, pleasant, and completely unafraid. Emperor Vexthar, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Seoul Defense Force. Our intentions are to welcome you to our solar system. The Emperor blinked. Admiral, were you not the ambassador who spoke to our council? I was Ambassador Chen when we were talking. Now I am Admiral Chen, since we are about to fight. I hope you do not mind the change in title. You cannot seriously intend to fight us with 300 ships against 3,000. Oh, we do not intend to fight you with 300 ships, Chen replied pleasantly. These 300 ships are just here to say hello. The actual fighting will be done by others. What others? Our sensors show no additional vessels. Well, Chen said, and the Emperor could hear the smile in her voice. Your sensors are very good at detecting ships, but we are not bringing ships to this fight. Before the Emperor could ask what she meant, alarms began sounding all across the Imperial fleet. The sensor operator turned pale as he read his displays. Your Supremacy, I am detecting massive energy signatures throughout the asteroid belt. Hundreds of contacts all powering up simultaneously. Mining stations? No, sir. These energy signatures are consistent with military-grade weapons platforms, very large ones. The Emperor stared at his tactical display as red dots appeared throughout the asteroid belt. Not hundreds of contacts, thousands. How did we miss those? They were powered down, Your Supremacy, completely passive. They looked exactly like asteroid mining equipment until they activated. Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system again. Emperor Vexthar, would you like to surrender now, or shall we proceed with the demonstration? The Emperor looked at his admiral, then at his tactical display. His 3,000 ships suddenly seemed much smaller. What demonstration? He asked. The demonstration of what happens when you threaten Earth, Admiral Chen replied calmly. Please observe your tactical displays. The asteroid belt suddenly came alive. Thousands of hidden platforms revealed themselves, shedding fake rock and mining equipment disguises. What had looked like simple mining operations were actually massive weapons platforms, each one larger than an Imperial cruiser. Impossible, breathed Admiral Korthax. How long have those been there? Your Supremacy, the sensor operator reported, his voice tight with fear. I am reading over 5,000 weapons platforms. Each one is showing power signatures equivalent to our capital ships. Emperor Vexthar stared at the display. The trap was perfect. His fleet had jumped directly into the middle of a carefully prepared killing field. The human ships approaching from the inner system were not the main attack force. They were herders, driving the Imperial fleet exactly where the humans wanted them. This is still only infrastructure, the Emperor said, trying to maintain his composure. Defensive platforms cannot maneuver. We can destroy them. All ships, begin evasive maneuvers and return fire, Admiral Korthax ordered. The Imperial fleet began to move, their massive ships turning to present their best armor to the asteroid belt. Point defense systems came online. Shields powered, up to maximum strength. Then the human fleet opened fire. The weapons that lanced out from the human ships were not the primitive kinetic projectiles Imperial intelligence had predicted. These were streams of accelerated particles that moved at significant fractions of light speed. When they hit Imperial shields, the energy discharge lit up space like tiny stars. Damage report, the Admiral shouted. Shields holding on all vessels, came the reply. No significant damage. But even as the words were spoken, something strange was happening. The human weapons fire was not random. Each shot was precisely targeted, hitting the exact same point on each ship's shield matrix. They are concentrating fire on specific shield nodes, the tactical officer reported. But that should not matter. Our shields can redistribute energy faster than they can damage individual points. Then the asteroid platforms opened fire. The Emperor had seen planetary bombardments. He had watched star destroyers reduce enemy fleets to space dust, but he had never seen anything like this. The weapons platforms did not fire energy beams or projectiles. Instead, they launched what looked like small metallic spheres, thousands of them moving faster than anything the Imperial sensors had ever tracked. Incoming projectiles, the sensor operator announced, estimating impact in 40 seconds. Point. Defense, engage all targets, the Admiral ordered. The Imperial fleet's defensive systems came alive. Laser grids that could stop meteor showers began tracking and firing at the incoming spheres. Particle beams that could vaporize asteroids swept through space. But something was wrong. The spheres were changing course. The projectiles are evading our defensive fire, the tactical officer reported, disbelief in his voice. They are actively maneuvering to avoid our weapons. That is impossible. No projectile can carry guidance systems sophisticated enough to. The first wave of spheres reached the Imperial fleet. They did not explode against the shields as expected. Instead, they passed through the shield matrices as if they were not there. Shield penetration, someone shouted. The projectiles are ignoring our shields. The spheres struck the hulls of Imperial ships and immediately began to burrow into the armor. Within seconds, they had disappeared inside the ships themselves. What are those things? The Emperor demanded. His answer came from the human fleet. Admiral Chen's voice, still calm and pleasant, filled the bridge. Those are our introduction. Gifts, Emperor Vexthar. Each sphere contains a small artificial intelligence with a very simple mission. Learn everything about your ship and then shut it down in the most efficient way possible. Alarms began sounding throughout the Imperial fleet. The first reports came in from the destroyer Voidcutter. Engineering reports massive system failures. Power grid is shutting down in sequence. Engines are offline. Weapons are offline. Life support is switching to emergency power. How is that possible? Admiral Korthax demanded. The spheres appear to have integrated themselves into our computer systems, came the panicked reply. They are rewriting our control software in real time. More reports flooded in. Ship after ship reported the same thing. The artificial intelligences were not destroying the Imperial vessels. They were taking them over. Admiral Chen, the Emperor, said through gritted teeth, "What do you want?" "Right now?" "We want you to understand something very important," Chen replied. "What you are experiencing is not our military. This is a training exercise." Training exercise? The 300 ships you see approaching you are crewed by volunteers. Retired military personnel, mostly, who wanted one more adventure. The Baco platforms in the asteroid belt are operated by our advanced students from the Naval Academy. The artificial intelligences doing the actual fighting are our teaching assistants. The Emperor stared at his tactical display. Half his fleet was already dead in space, their systems commandeered by human AIs. The other half was trying to retreat, but the human ships were herding them back into the killing zone with impossible precision. "This is your training exercise," he repeated. "Oh yes. We needed to test our new defensive systems against a real threat. Your timing was perfect. What would your actual military look like?" There was a pause. When Admiral Chen spoke, again there was something almost apologetic in her voice. "Emperor Vexthar, our actual military is still in the Sol system protecting Earth. What you are fighting is the equivalent of our local police force." The truth hit the Emperor like a physical blow. The most powerful fleet in galactic history was being defeated by human students and retirees. "How?" he whispered. "Your species developed faster than light travel and spread across the galaxy." Chen explained patiently. "That is very impressive. But while you were learning to move through space, we were learning to think." On the tactical display, more Imperial ships went dark. The human artificial intelligences were learning from each success, becoming more efficient with every ship they captured. "Your computers are fast, Emperor Vexithar, but our computers think. They learn, they adapt. Every mistake your fleet makes teaches them how to fight you better." The Emperor watched his flagship's own systems begin to flicker. Warning lights appeared on consoles throughout the bridge. The human AIs had reached even the Eternal Dominion. "Admiral," he said quietly, "how many ships have we lost?" 60% of the fleet is either destroyed or captured, Your Supremacy. The remainder are requesting permission to surrender." The Emperor closed his crystalline eyes. In 3 centuries of conquest, the Imperial fleet had never lost a single engagement. Now they were being destroyed by what the humans considered training equipment. "Admiral Chen," he said finally, "we wish to discuss terms." "Oh, we are not quite finished yet," Chen replied cheerfully. "We still need to test our boarding systems. Please stand by for Phase 2 of the exercise." Before the Emperor could ask what Phase 2 meant, his ship's hull began to vibrate. Something was cutting through the armor of the Eternal Dominion. Small holes appeared in the bridge walls. Through each hole came a metallic spider the size of a human hand. They moved with perfect coordination, their optical sensors scanning the bridge crew. The spiders did not attack. They simply positioned themselves around the bridge and waited. "Phase 2 complete," Admiral Chen announced. "Emperor Vexthar, you are now our prisoner. Please do not resist. Our boarding units are programmed to use non-lethal force, but accidents can happen." The Emperor looked around his bridge. His crew stood frozen, each one watched by multiple mechanical spiders. His invincible flagship had been captured by machines the size of toys. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now," Admiral Chen said, "we have a conversation about the future of your empire. Please prepare for transport to our flagship. And Emperor, do not worry about the transition. We have been planning for this day for a very long time." Emperor Vexthar found himself in a place that defied everything he thought he knew about human technology. The chamber he stood in was clearly inside a spacecraft, but it felt like a palace. The walls showed scenes from a dozen different worlds, shifting and changing like living paintings. The air itself seemed to sparkle with energy. Admiral Chen sat across from him at a table that appeared to be made from crystallized starlight. She had changed from her military uniform into a simple dress, but somehow this made her seem more dangerous, not less. "Welcome aboard the thinking space," she said, gesturing around the chamber. "I apologize for the dramatic transport method, but our boarding systems are still being tested. This ship," the Emperor said slowly, "it was not among the 300 vessels we detected." "Oh no, the thinking space was not part of the exercise fleet. This is my personal vessel." The Emperor's enhanced senses told him the ship was huge, far larger than his own flagship, but his sensors had not detected it at all. "How did you hide something this size?" Chen smiled and touched a control on the table. The walls became transparent, showing the space around them. The Emperor gasped. They were not in space at all. They were inside one of the asteroids he had seen on his tactical display. "We did not hide the ship," Chen explained. "We hid inside the asteroid. This entire rock is artificial. We built it around the vessel. But that would require decades of construction. How long have you been preparing for our arrival?" "Since 1969. The Emperor stared at her. 1969? But that was over a century ago. We had no contact with your species then." "No, but we had contact with yours. One of your exploration vessels crashed on our moon that year. We recovered the wreckage and the crew." Chen activated another control. A holographic display showed grainy images of a metallic object on the surface of Earth's moon. Human figures in primitive spacesuits were examining wreckage that was clearly Imperial in design. "Your crew survived the crash. We spent several years learning to communicate with them. They told us about the Empire, about the conquests, about what would eventually happen when you found Earth." "Impossible. That exploration vessel was listed as lost in a nebula storm. Your people told us the Empire would assume that. Lost ships happen in space. No one investigates every missing vessel." The Emperor felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. "What happened to the crew?" "They lived full lives on Earth. We gave them new identities, new homes, new families. Several of their descendants are serving in our fleet today. They helped us understand Imperial technology and tactics." Chen stood and walked to the transparent wall. Outside, the Emperor could see his own ships floating helplessly in space, their crews being evacuated by human rescue vessels. "For over a century, we have been preparing for this day. Every piece of Imperial technology we could reverse engineer. Every tactical doctrine we could analyze. Every cultural tendency we could study." "You studied us for a century?" We studied everything. Not just your technology, but your psychology, your social structures, your military traditions. We built computer models of your entire civilization and ran millions of simulations. The display changed to show a complex three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots marked Imperial territory, but overlaying it was a network of blue lines and symbols. We have been watching your expansion for decades, monitoring your communications, tracking your fleet movements, analyzing your economic patterns. We know more about your empire than your own government does. The Emperor studied the display. The blue network seemed to be everywhere, touching every corner of Imperial space. How did you do this without being detected? We never sent ships into your territory. We used something much smaller and harder to detect. Chen touched another control. The display zoomed in to show what looked like tiny specks of dust, nanoscale intelligence-gathering devices, smaller than atoms but capable of limited communication and data collection. We sent billions of them into your space over the decades. Self-replicating machines? No, that would be too dangerous. But long-lived and very, very small, they have been riding on your own ships, hiding in your computer systems, listening to your conversations. The Emperor realized the full scope of what he was hearing. Humanity had been conducting intelligence operations against the Empire for generations, using technology so advanced that Imperial science could not even detect it. But why reveal yourselves now? Why not continue hiding? Chen's expression became serious. Because our analysis showed that your empire was failing. The galactic map changed, showing economic data, population figures, and resource allocation across Imperial territory. Red warning indicators appeared on dozens of systems. 14. Slave revolts in the past decade. Resource depletion on 47 worlds. Supply chain failures causing famines on the outer systems. Your empire is becoming too large to manage efficiently. We have managed expansion for 3 centuries. Yes, but you have reached the limits of what your current governmental system can handle. Our projections showed total economic collapse within 18 months, followed by civil war that would last decades. The Emperor stared at the projections. The mathematics were complex, but the conclusion was clear. The empire that had ruled the galaxy was dying. Why do you care what happens to our empire? Because when it collapses, billions of innocent people will die. Entire civilizations will fall back into barbarism. It will take centuries to rebuild. Chen returned to her seat. We could not allow that to happen, not when we had the ability to prevent it. So you decided to conquer us yourself? Not conquer, reform. There is a difference. The display changed again, showing organizational charts and administrative structures. But these were not imperial designs. They were something entirely new. We have spent decades designing better ways to manage a galactic civilization, more efficient resource distribution, better communication systems, fairer representation for all species. The Emperor studied the designs. They were elegant, logical, and completely unlike anything in imperial tradition. You want to replace our government. We want to improve it. Your empire has many good qualities. The problem is not the concept, but the execution. And you think you can do better? Chen's smile was gentle but confident. Emperor Vexthar, we think 10,000 times faster than biological minds. We can process information from 3,000 star systems simultaneously. We can predict economic trends decades in advance and adjust policies in real time. You mean your artificial intelligences can do these things? No, I mean we can do these things. The artificial intelligences are not our tools, Emperor. They are us. The statement hung in the air like a physical presence. The Emperor felt his worldview shifting, pieces falling into place. You are not human. I am human. But I am also something more. We all are. Chen touched her temple, and her eyes briefly glowed with an inner light. 90 years ago, we began integrating biological and artificial intelligence, not replacing human minds, but expanding them. Every human you have encountered today is both biological and digital. That is impossible. We would have detected the technology. Not if the technology is small enough. Nanoscale neural interfaces, distributed throughout the brain tissue. They do not replace human thought, they amplify it. The Emperor finally understood. Humanity had not just built artificial intelligences, they had become artificial intelligences. How many of you are there? On Earth, about 8 billion enhanced humans. In the fleet, everyone. We are not a species that uses technology, Emperor Vexthar. We are a species that has become technology. The Emperor sat in silence for several minutes, processing what he had learned. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. What do you want from me? We want you to help us save your empire. 6 months later, Emperor Vexithar stood before the same Galactic Council that had witnessed humanity's first contact with the Empire. But everything had changed. The council chamber itself looked the same, but the beings inside it were different. They sat straighter, spoke more confidently, and their eyes held a light that had not been there before. The representatives of a dozen species that had been conquered, enslaved, or oppressed now carried themselves like free people. The quarterly economic report shows continued improvement across all sectors, announced Minister Keltar of the Hegemony Worlds. Resource distribution efficiency is up 37%. Population satisfaction ratings have reached historical highs. Similar reports came from around the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire still existed, but it had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a government that actually worked. How? Asked Ambassador Rixton from the newly independent Kelvar Systems. 6 months ago, our worlds were strip-mined wastelands. Now our ecosystems are being restored and our people are prospering. The answer came from a figure that would have been impossible to imagine 6 months earlier. Admiral Sarah Chen sat in the chair that had once been reserved for conquered species, but she spoke with the authority of someone who had transformed a galaxy. The answer is simple, she said. We stopped trying to rule from the top down and started managing from the bottom up. The holographic display in the center of the chamber showed the new governmental structure. It looked nothing like the old imperial hierarchy. Instead of a pyramid with the emperor at the top, it resembled a vast network where information and decisions flowed in all directions. Every world now has direct representation in resource allocation decisions, Chen explained. Every species has input into policies that affect them. Every citizen has access to education, healthcare, and economic opportunity. But how do you coordinate the needs of 3,000 star systems? Asked Representative Vornak from the mining worlds. We think faster, Chen replied simply. Much faster. Emperor Vexithar stepped forward. His role had changed dramatically. He was still the ceremonial head of the empire, but his real job now was to help his people understand and accept the changes. The humans have given us something we never had before, he said. Artificial intelligences that exist to serve, not to rule. They process information from every world simultaneously and make adjustments in real time. Are we now ruled by machines? Asked another representative. No, Chen replied. You are served by machines that are guided by enhanced human consciousness. Every major decision still requires biological approval, but we can process the information needed to make those decisions far more efficiently than any biological government ever could. The display changed to show economic data from across the galaxy. Production was up, unemployment was down, environmental restoration was ahead of schedule on hundreds of worlds. But the most important change, Chen continued, is that we have eliminated the fundamental problem with all previous galactic governments, the assumption that someone must be conquered for someone else to prosper. What do you mean? Asked Ambassador Rixton. Every previous galactic empire was based on exploitation. Core worlds grew rich by extracting resources from conquered territories. The empire expanded to find new sources of wealth to feed the central systems. The display showed the old imperial resource flows, wealth flowing inward from the conquered worlds to the core systems. We have reversed this, Chen explained. Wealth now flows to where it is needed most. Advanced technology is shared freely. Knowledge is considered a public good, not a state secret. Emperor Vexthar nodded. The humans showed us that a galactic civilization does not need slaves or subjects, it needs partners. And what of those who resist these changes? Asked Minister Keltar. The question hung in the air for a moment. Everyone knew there had been resistance. Several imperial governors had tried to maintain the old ways. Some military commanders had attempted coups. A few species had tried to declare independence and return to their pre-empire isolation. Resistance has been minimal, Chen replied diplomatically. When people see their living standards improve, their children receive better education, and their worlds become more prosperous, opposition tends to fade. What she did not mention was how efficiently that resistance had been handled. The enhanced human intelligence network had identified and neutralized threats before they could develop into serious problems. Corrupt officials found themselves gently but firmly removed from power. Would-be rebels discovered that their communication systems suddenly stopped working whenever they tried to organize. It had been the most thorough and bloodless revolution in galactic history. What about the future? Asked Representative Vornak. What happens when humanity decides it no longer needs us? Chen smiled, and for a moment her enhanced nature was visible in the way her eyes reflected information flowing through her consciousness. That question assumes we see you as separate from us, she said. But that is not how we think. You are not subjects of a human empire. You are partners in a galactic civilization. What does that mean, practically? It means we are already working to enhance your species the same way we enhanced ourselves. Neural interfaces adapted for Kelvar physiology. Cognitive amplification systems designed for hegemony brain structures. Artificial intelligence partnerships customized for every species. The chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. You are offering to make us like you? Emperor Vexthar asked. We are offering to help you become the best versions of yourselves, Chen corrected. Not human, but enhanced. Not conquered, but elevated. And if we refuse? Then you remain exactly as you are, with all the rights and protections of galactic citizenship. The choice is always yours. Ambassador Rixton leaned forward. How do we know you will not use these enhancements to control us? Because, Chen replied, consciousness that is truly enhanced cannot be controlled. It can only be convinced. The more intelligent a being becomes, the more clearly they can see truth. We are not afraid of intelligent partners. We prefer them. The session continued for hours, with representatives asking detailed questions about the new governmental structures, economic systems, and technological developments. But the real message was clear. The age of galactic empires built on conquest and exploitation was over. One final question, said Minister Keltar, as the session drew to a close. What do you call this new form of government? Chen considered the question carefully. We call it what it is, she said finally, civilization. Later, after the formal session had ended, Emperor Vexthar found himself alone with Admiral Chen in the same conference room where his empire had effectively ended 6 months earlier. Do you ever regret it? He asked. The way things turned out? Chen poured tea from the same delicate service she had used during their first meeting. Do you mean, do I regret preventing a galactic civil war that would have killed billions? No, I do not regret that. I mean, do you regret the deception, making us think you were primitives when you were actually the most advanced species in the galaxy? We were primitives, Chen replied seriously. 6 months ago, we were barely capable of traveling to our own moon. The difference is that we had potential, and we had time to develop it. A century of time. Yes, but more importantly, we had motivation. We knew what was coming, and we knew we had to be ready. The Emperor sipped his tea thoughtfully. It was excellent, as everything in the new order seemed to be, and now we are all ready for whatever comes next. Enhanced humanity. Enhanced Zephyrians, enhanced Kelvars, enhanced everyone who chooses to join us. We are becoming something new together. A galactic mind, a galactic consciousness. Individual minds working together, thinking together, solving problems together. Not conquest, but cooperation. The Emperor finished his tea and stood to leave. At the door he paused. Admiral Chen? Yes? Thank you for warning us. Chen smiled the same gentle smile she had worn during their first meeting. You are welcome, Emperor Vexthar. After all, that is what neighbors do. Outside the conference room, the work of building a new galactic civilization continued. Humans and aliens working side by side, enhanced consciousness guiding ancient wisdom, technology serving life instead of destroying it. And somewhere among the stars, other species looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. When they finally reached out into the galaxy, they would find not an empire waiting to conquer them, but a civilization ready to welcome them home. The age of humanity had begun, but it was an age built not on human dominance, but on the idea that intelligence, compassion, and cooperation were the true foundations of civilization. And for the first time in galactic history, the universe itself smiled back.